Out of New Orleans, Mike Detillier, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Ryan.
Mike, I want to spend some time when you talk about Landon Collins getting a big contract yesterday. I know he's from the state of Louisiana, but you're talking about making some cheddar with a large record-setting deal. Huge for Landon Collins.
Yeah, no question about it. You know, Landon still trains down here in Metairie in the off season, so I get to see him. And you know, I think he was disappointed. I think he thought the Giants would make him a much better offer than they did. But boy, did he hit pay dirt! And isn't Washington becoming Alabama East?
Should we rename it? Should we rename it the Washington Crimson Tide or something?
Man, are they piling up Alabama football players there? But you know, Landon's a guy, and when you watch him play, you impress with his physicality, his toughness against the run. He's gotten better in the coverage part of the game, which is, I mean, so huge today in the NFL. But, you know, they brought him in there also to be a leader on defense. And that's something that, you know, with the Redskins, they need a bell cow guy to kind of take control. And they feel that they're getting that in Landon Collins, who was a good player with the Giants. But, man, Ryan, you just think about last year, the safety market was basically dead. Kenny Vaccaro, who, you know, played down here in New Orleans for some time, you know, it was late before he signed a contract with the Tennessee Titans. Eric Reed, LSU guy, who, and some of that certainly had to do with his connection with Colin Kaepernick, but, you know, it was during the season before he signed. And, you know, Tyrann Mathieu, another tremendous football player, he didn't get a whole lot of interest out in the free agent market once the Cardinals cut him. And look this year, what the safeties are getting. It's a total change around. And, you know, Tyrann put it best to me that, you know, when you play safety, they want you to cover like a corner. They want you to play up front like a linebacker. Now they take out linebackers and put you in there on third down situations, or they put you in the slot, but they didn't want to pay. But this year, total change around in that.
All right, a lot of people want to talk about the Saints and Mark Ingram. They're going to go another direction, looks like.
Yeah, it looks to be, and looks as though the Ravens are the hot team after him. Last year, almost a year ago, in a couple of days, we had an event here at the Touchdown Club in New Orleans. And Alabama assistant coach Burton Burns, who's a New Orleanian and has coached here at Tulane and coached at Clemson, and certainly been a huge factor at University of Alabama. He was the college football assistant coach of the year. He got into the Hall of Fame. And Mark Ingram was his presenter. So it was basically a year ago. We got to talk a little bit. Mark's wife was pregnant at the time, and she was due. This was on a Saturday night. She was due on the Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So they left a little early, and he told me at that time, you know, we've been talking. I just don't know if we can get a deal done. And they were, just by the way he said it, I kind of pieced that they weren't close. And during the season, you know, he had been asked about it, and he just sort of, you know, trying to work on it. I want to be here and that sort of thing. But they never got close money-wise. Well, the Saints offered a little over $4 million a year. You know, Mark was looking for $7 million.
Wow.
Oh, Ryan, that's a big cavern.
What do you think he'll get it? You think he'll get a big contract? I mean, what do you think is the market for Mark Ingram?
I think he'll get something. He'll get more than 4, that's for sure. Again, does he get 7? I'm not sure. But 29-year-old running back. And, you know, and he told me at that time, you know, this is going to be my last one. You know, he's going to turn 30, I think, in either November or December. So, now you look at the money that's being spent right now, Ryan. That's quite possibly he could get it. Man, listen, but any team to pay Devin Funchess $13 million like the Colts did, so wow. Mark Ingram won't get $7 million. Come on. That's unbelievable that he could pull that off. But Ingram's been a good football player for this team. He's a really good receiver coming out of the backfield. He's been a team leader. And if I put Drew Brees on the lie detector machine, one of the things, if he said, because Drew's always politically correct, the one guy that always protects him well, and, in pass protection sets is Mark Ingram. Mark grew to be a really good pass blocker. And that's why I could see a team like Baltimore interested. They're a heavy run-oriented team now with Lamar, but they need to protect him too. That's the thing with a young quarterback. Sometimes, they get a little itchy in the pocket and they want to take off, but they got to do a much better job protecting him in the pocket. And so I wouldn't be shocked to see him get in that neighborhood of what he was looking for. When you're looking for 7 and they offer you 4, come on, that's not going to work. And basically that's what they got with Latavius Murray, a guy that was contract friendly. And I think they took it before Ingram, was back and forth with this.
Then you look at the Jets signing with C.J. Mosley, certainly another big Alabama guy, and gets a ton of money. 5-year, $85 million deal, $51 million guaranteed. That's even hard to even say that he's making that type of cash. $17 million per year. Am I right about that? That looks like a misprint when you look at C.J. Mosley going to the Jets.
I put this out yesterday. It's stunning, some of the money that's being thrown around. And listen, I'm all for the player. You get what you can.
Sure.
Multi-billionaire owners, come on. You got to spend your money. So, you do the best you can in free agency, and the more you can get, hey, God bless you. But that's a lot of money for CJ, who's been a really good player for Baltimore, a guy that does a really good job in run support, very physical player up front, has gotten better in the pass coverage part of the game. But, man, Ryan, that's a ton of money. And he's playing for Greg Williams, too. Man, the one thing with Greg, he don't know anything about tapping the brakes, playing defense. You got to play all out for him. That's been his calling card his entire life. Coaching is basically hit the accelerator and never tap the brake. And so it's really something to see that kind of money being thrown around now in free agency. But that's a ton of money for CJ. But he's going on a team that has some defensive pieces there. And you wonder a little bit, with that early pick, would the Jets take a long look at Quinnen Williams? I know in talking to Coach Pete Jenkins, who was the award winner this year for the Assistant Coach Award, he told me, he said, I think he'd be a great fit with the Jets, put him alongside Leonard Williams. And you got something there. You got 2 guys up front that's going to give a lot of issues if that happens, and they got an early enough pick to do it.
Well, Mike, you talk about money, okay? I'm looking at a guy, Kareem Jackson. Yep. He gets a 3-year deal. It's $11 million a year, $23 million guaranteed. He's been in the league for a long time. Kareem Jackson from Alabama signing with the Broncos earlier today. Alabama's Greg Byrne, if I was the AD here, I'd be calling some of these guys. They're in the midst of like a $600 million fundraising campaign. Call 3 of the players. You could beat it halfway there.
Well, you know how to pass the collection.
Sure you
do. With the money that's being thrown around there. And, Kareem's a guy, also, too, with Vic Fangio. Vic puts a big stock on tackling as a cornerback. Like you said, anybody can see if they can cover. But I want to see if they can tackle well out in open space. And that was one thing that he brought up about Kareem. And you got to be willing to pay for it. And, again, in this market early on, again, it depends on if you got it, who do you spend it on, and you got to have a clear vision for that player. But that's a huge amount of money for Kareem. A big amount. But in today's world, that seemingly the calling card, for years people said, only the quarterbacks and wide receivers, running backs are getting money. Ryan, that ain't the case anymore. If you can rush your quarterback and you can cover, you're getting a ton of money.
Mike, I want to segue to a couple of different things. Nick Saban said on Friday that Alabama's got to reestablish the Alabama factor. He said that Alabama's got to reestablish, so that means that you lost something Nick Saban has said this multiple times this offseason, getting back to the Alabama way of doing things. Sounds like to me they got caught up trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and listen, Nick has been somebody that, I've told you this story numerous times, that in events, he basically kind of had the same speech over and over again when he was at LSU. And it was all about the physicality part of the game and running the football and stopping the run. And, that was something he emphasized over and over and over again. And he would always throw that little caveat every once in a while. He says, hey, you're going to get caught by a gunslinger. You're going to get caught by a guy that, no matter what you're going to do, he's going to get after you, and you're going to have a tough time. But, like he says, if you can run the football and control the tempo of a game and also stop the run, then you can do some things in third down to put a lot of pressure on that quarterback. And I do think that that's something he felt maybe they got a little bit away from. And you look at that running back core you had a really experienced offensive line, some big guys up front that kind of moved the peg around. But I think this is his calling card. I think he's looking for something to try to motivate his team, and he's always looking for another element. That's something, too, that kind of gets lost in this, and that he's always looking to put the carrot out there. He's always looking for that element to motivate his football team. And I think he feels as though that he wants to get back to a more physical brand of football on both sides of the football.
Will it work, though, Mike? Can you be physical in the spread look that they're giving everybody? I mean, can you go back to that? I mean, can you win the same way? I mean, we talked about Mark Ingram a couple of minutes ago. The game has changed. The game that you and I follow, it has changed. It's changed at the NFL, but it's certainly changed at the college game level.
Yeah, and how much of that, too, is psychological,
Sure.
With your players, that, hey, we're going to be a much more physical team. Come on, if you got Tua at quarterback, guess what? You're going to throw the football. I mean, come on, you're not reinventing the wheel here. But I think this is just a calling card for him, the motivation for him and for his team to get back to it. And this kind of revolving door of assistant coaches. And for the first time, Alabama took a big hit losing guys early to the NFL. And it does have an effect. The 1A is players. You got to have players to win. And I do know that, Jimmy Johnson told me this years ago, and it's absolutely true. He says, when you have a successful team, two things are guaranteed to happen. One, you're going to get players come to you that would have never even given a second look to your football team years ago, and from outside your own region. And he said, secondly, you're going to lose them early to the NFL. So he said, you're going to have to combat that. And he said, what it hurts you is not necessarily the starter. Where it hurts you at is in depth. And you start to lose it. And that's where I think in this year's team with a lot of young defensive linemen, now you've got to replace, your center and Jonah up front. That I think, he wants that physicality part brought back. I don't see a dramatic change offensively in what they're going to do, but I think it's his way of kind of motivating his team psychologically that we got to kind of beat up against Clemson. We got beat up with them, and we're not going to let that happen again, because you always have the last game in the back of your mind until you play the next one. That's a long stretch, Ryan, from January all the way into the end of August. That's a long time before you play that. And so I think that's more of a motivation to his football team and getting back to that physical brand of football. But I don't think it has anything to do with philosophically changing things, especially when you have a signature player like Tua. You got to play to his strengths, because you're not going to have that sort of quarterback, forever. You're going to get him every once in a while, but man, he's a generational player. And so you're going to have to modify your offense to his strengths, and that's his ability to throw the football. And when he's healthy, he's as good as anybody in the game. And, basically you could say if the draft were tomorrow, he's going to end up, him and the kid out in that Oregon, Herbert, they're going to be 1-2, in the draft for 2020.
Mike, you've been doing this a long time. I woke up this morning to a headline. Part of the scheme was that rich people would pay a bribe, and a college coach faked it so their kid appeared to be recruited athletes, so it would be easier to get in blank so-and-so college. Where are we going?
Ryan, I got no idea, but, today, does anything really shock anyone?
No, not at all.
It may surprise you a little bit
Sure.
at the stretch of the rubber band people will go to, but nothing today really shocks you on what people will do and what people will do for money. That's the thing, and it's no longer amateur. The college stuff, and that's long past this amateur part of sports. You're in the junior professional league now.
So why don't we just pay these guys, Mike?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's basically what you got already. So, but if you do that, Ryan, then I think the NCAA loses control of what the powers they have.
Sure.
And I think that's the main part of this. They want to keep full control over what they have. And they rarely come down on a program. All these things that happen, it's not NCAA investigations, is it? It's the FBI or, it's someone else doing all the work. And they sort of clean up at the end. So I don't know where all this ends, but we are living in a different era of pay-for-play athletes, coaches being almost middlemen in a lot of cases, with money changing hands with apparel companies and, everything else that's happening. Nothing shocks me anymore in college football. And the control of the sports has now, it's the Wild Wild West. Is basically, that's what it is today. And I had a college coach who's now in the professional ranks tell me that, in recruiting today, it is basically that. It's like you ventured into the Wild Wild West, and you better come prepared because one way or another, either you get the athlete or you got to play against him, so you better become prepared to do what you got to do to try to get him aboard.
Well, but Mike, I said this as I opened up the show. You and I cover college football, and we hit basketball when it's March Madness and those time of the years. But I said, you look at all the different cutthroat in the SEC football recruiting, it's a walk in the park. I mean, you got Kirby Smart using the age of Nick Saban. That's elementary compared to basketball recruiting. I'm convinced you got to waller with the hogs to be successful in basketball. I just think I think it's the way it is.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. And Ryan, I'm going to be honest with you. In listening to some stories I've heard about recruiting of high school baseball players, that's just maybe a notch below it. I mean, it's unreal what goes on. The thing there is the fact that you can get drafted into the pros as an 18-year-old. And now, colleges are now fighting, going up against a professional team that can throw that type signing bonus at you. If it's $1.5 million or $2 million for someone who doesn't have anything, that's a lot to contend with. When you're an 18-year-old and you get picked 8th and 9th in the draft, and they're going to throw a $2 million signing bonus at you. That's difficult to say. Nah, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to go to college. You're going to have to work a little while out of college to make that $2 million. So, again, I think not only football, but basketball, baseball, and, and some of the even other sports that you look at, how IMG got cranked up. That wasn't a football school at one time. That was a tennis academy. And the competition there to try to grab the best tennis players, golfing. So it's the cycle that we cover each and every day. And money and power and ego and everything else gets involved. But bottom line is, for someone 17, 18 years old, that temptation of money to to play, and now it's the one and done's not even going to be there anymore in college basketball. It's going to be tough for these young men to say, no, I'm going to go to college. Come on, they're going to take that money and try their deal in the professional ranks, if it's baseball or basketball at this spot. Football has somewhat been able to cover themselves in that 3-year rule that you got to be in there at least 3 years. But Ryan, eventually, don't you feel like I do? I think in our lifetime, we live long enough, that's going to get challenged too.
Oh, sure it will. Sure it will. There's no doubt. Hey, Mike, as always, let me invite people to connect with you. For one, on the Twitter account, Mike Detillier there, MikeDetillier.com, where you can go order the 2019 draft guide. That's going to be mailed in early April as we count down the days until Nashville, Tennessee. College and pro football analyst, WWL, AM and FM out of New Orleans, the legendary 870. Mike Detillier, it is always great to be able to catch up with you here in Tuscaloosa. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ryan.
Absolutely.